Three officers are shot by the same suspect, and the suspect is no longer on this planet, which is probably a good thing for everybody. I've put together only the portions of this video that are important for this discussion, so I'll play the video for you, and then I'll go back and we'll talk about the tactics and the decision making.
Shots fired! Shots fired! It's going westbound, eastbound. I'm shot. It's just 1050.
It doesn't look like anyone's in there. Alright, so we have a critical incident that's going on. It's kind of dangerous right now. Did anyone jump inside your yard or backyard? No. Where are you headed to? The store. Okay. What I need you to do, can you go inside your house and shelter in place? Yeah. Well, please. Hey, there's an older WFA in this house. She's the one I talked to.
They go back inside?
Yeah.
Hello, please.
Get her up! Get her! Get her! Hey, stand up. Are you hurt?
No.
Get her up! Get her up! Get her up! Get her! I got you. I got you. Huh? I got her. I got her.
Behind over here.
Yeah. Hello, please. Get fire! Get her out! Get her out! Get her out! Stand up. Are you hurt? Where is he? Get her out! I don't know. He's in back away. He's shooting deep. Get in the shield. He's shooting at us deep.
Stay right there, watch it. Yeah, got it right there.
We got blood on the fridge, dude. So we got blood.
I got you.
I'm not going to go into great detail about the difference between passenger side and driver side approaches. I do think there is a misconception because you often hear people say passenger side approaches are safer, and I'm going to explain when they do become safer. So if you're approaching on the driver's side and the suspect starts shooting, well, now for the suspect to continue to engage you, he simply has to either keep engaging you because maybe you're over this direction, or if you have egress maybe back towards the rear of your vehicle, which is more likely, he simply has to step out and then engage you this way. Whereas if you approach on the passenger side and the suspect takes those initial rounds at you or fires at you initially, now for him to continue engaging you, he's going to have to step out of the vehicle and then overcome his own vehicle to continue engaging you. And by that time, you have probably found cover, hopefully, or at least are drawing your own firearm to get ready to engage him. So people always say passenger side approaches are safer, but they're commonly using a suspect who is incoherent or not paying attention as the standard, and that should never be the standard. The standard should always be a person with a gun who is ready, willing, and capable to hurt you. So if I'm the bad guy and somebody wants to say passenger side approaches are safer, when am I going to shoot you on the passenger side? I'm going to shoot you when the opportunity presents itself. So if you're approaching on the driver's side and you're coming up this way, that opportunity just happens to come sooner. If you're approaching on the passenger side, well, when am I going to engage you? Maybe it's not when you're standing at the rear window. Maybe it's when you're asking for my driver's license. Maybe it's after you're looking up into the vehicle. Maybe after you push up to see what's in the passenger seat because you want to investigate further what's inside the vehicle. But that is when passenger side approaches become safer, and that's after the initial gunfire because it's going to be harder for the suspect to continue engaging you. Typically, I'm an advocate against officers shooting into vehicles, and that's because almost always two things are true. They either don't know who's in the vehicle and or they don't know where their rounds are going. In this case, the officer either theoretically or actually walked up to the vehicle and saw that there was nobody in the back seat, and therefore, if he's going to be shooting into the vehicle and his rounds are actually hitting the vehicle, then it's extremely unlikely his rounds will go anywhere other than inside the vehicle. I have been a part of vehicle pursuits where there was kids in the vehicle, and I have been a part of instances where bad guys do aggravated robberies with kids inside the vehicle, and we don't realize there's kids in the vehicle until after the robbery is over with. So if we don't know who's in the vehicle and we don't know where our rounds are going, we don't want to be shooting. In this case, I understand why the officer did.
Shots fired! Shots fired! It's going westbound, eastbound.
If we're going to be moving a long distance, then you should consider taking your vehicle with you because you may end up in a situation where you have nothing, whereas if you would have brought your vehicle, you would at least have some level of cover. So imagine you run all the way down here and now you're out of breath and you're exhausted and the suspect is waiting behind this U-Haul and he ambushes you. Obviously, that's a bad situation to be in. So just consider if you're going to be moving long distances, if you have the option available to you and it makes sense, you may want to consider bringing your vehicle with you. Now, when you're making approaches on the vehicle, on the driver's side and on the passenger side, there's places called the mitigation zone. On the driver's side, it's just past the driver's window, kind of coming back at an angle. And on the passenger side, it's on the passenger side rear of the vehicle, and it comes back at an angle like this. The mitigation zone is the area in which it is just extremely difficult and unlikely for a suspect inside the vehicle to shoot you. So it's kind of the area of relative safety. So as you're making these approaches, the closer that you can approach to the vehicle, the closer you are to be in the mitigation zone, or if you're not in the mitigation zone, the faster you will be able to get there once the shooting starts.
All right, so we have a critical incident that's going on. It's kind of dangerous right now. Did anyone jump inside your yard or backyard? Where are you headed to?
If you have an armed suspect and you don't know where he is, but he's probably in the area, you know, she's saying he's not in my house or she didn't see him doesn't mean he's not going in there now, or he didn't go in there and she didn't realize he was in there. But where is the suspect not? Well, the suspect is not inside her vehicle. So where is she the safest right now? Probably inside her vehicle. So instead of telling her to go back into a residence or her residence that we haven't searched yet and haven't verified, it's probably safer, better option for her just to leave the area.
Okay. What I need you to do, can you go inside your house and shelter in place?
Yeah.
In this situation here, look at the window. You see this is a photonic barrier. Any sort of ambient light from the outside during the daytime is going to cause you to not be able to see inside. And therefore, when we are kind of standing here pointing our gun at these windows, just understand that you're really not doing a whole lot and there's not a whole lot you probably can do. And I'll explain more here after we go over this officer's shooting. But instead of standing here, what would be the better, more preferred option is to be standing here, because actually what you should be doing is providing some level of body armor protection between yourself and this officer here. And so what kind of should happen instead of standing here is this officer standing here at an angle this way to protect this officer, and this officer over here would be standing here, and they would kind of have cross coverage on this window here. Again, your job in this situation is really to protect this officer from being shot. And actually what would make this way better, and they actually bring it up here in a minute, is having a shield here, because you can't shoot at what you can't see.
Well, please.
The female getting down here is obviously a sign that something probably isn't right, but more importantly, we should still be utilizing the fundamentals of CQB whenever we're working doors or people are coming to doors and not take these situations for granted. So instead of standing here a little bit more overexposed like this officer is right here, instead just utilize the threshold that you have available to you, scoot back a little bit, and treat this as if the suspect is coming to the door, or treat this as if as soon as this door comes open, the suspect's going to start shooting. And then in that situation, you will be less exposed. And it's this officer here that actually gets shot in the headset. So he was very close to actually, being killed here.
She's the one I talked to.
Again, you have just another look at this window here, photonic barrier. You see that you can't see in it. The light from the outside is causing a reflection, and it's really difficult for you to see inside at all, including the blinds being there. And I'm pointing this out to explain that this officer or the other subsequent officers outside could not have seen where the suspect was.
Did they come back inside? Yeah. Hello, please.
Now, I don't think that this officer actually knew where the suspect was. I understand why he stepped up and started shooting, and he actually deserves an award for doing this because he did exactly what you would expect an officer or should expect an officer to do in this situation, which is get to the hostage and get them out of the way, get them out of danger. Something to note here is really good that he didn't do is he didn't step inside, right? Because stepping inside would have exposed himself to more angles that he could not cover by himself. And something that I learned a long time ago is that you often see officers stepping in front of hostages or stepping in front of, victims. And if you can cover them with gunfire, well, then you don't actually need to physically put your body in front of them all the time. So this is really good. Like I said, the officer deserves an award. Don't know if he ever got him, but he also got shot in the vest when he did this.
Get her up! Step out! Get her up! Hey, stand up. Are you hurt? Get her up! Get her up! Get her up! Get her up!
Shout out to this female officer here who also deserves an award because she didn't just stand there and do nothing. She found work, and that work was grabbing onto this hostage and actually dragging her all the way behind this police vehicle to safety. Just to know, I looked up these officers' department or the patch, and it looks like these officers are just patrol officers. They look like maybe they're tactical officers in some way, but I'm pretty sure they're just patrol.
Hello, please.
Now, if we were to ask this officer questions and he answered honestly, what do you think the answers to these questions would be? Do you know where the suspect is? Well, if he was being honest, the answer would be no. Do you know what other citizens could be inside of this residence? Or if there are other citizens inside this residence? And the answer would be, I don't know. And if they are inside the residence, do you know where they're at? And his answer would be no. And if you asked him, do you know where your rounds are going? His answer would also be no. And that means that all of this stuff that we're doing, it's unacceptable. If he was on some type of team, like a SWAT team, then I'd be willing to bet that he would probably be removed from the team for this. In my opinion, this is reckless and unacceptable behavior. And you might not know this, but in the Breonna Taylor incident, the officer who was outside the apartment and he dumped a whole mag inside of the living room window and it went through the dining room and into the apartment next door where a kid was eating cereal at the table. When he was interviewed, and you can go look this up online, and they asked him about firing his handgun and what he saw, he said, I had no recollection or sensation that I was firing my gun at all. And if you would ask me or tell me that I fired my gun, I would call you a liar or tell you that that didn't happen. Obviously, we know that isn't true. That was just his best defense. And so you don't want to end up in a situation where that's what you have to say or you say something else other than the truth because you made a decision like this. These rounds you have to be accountable for. They could be going somewhere. And if they are going somewhere, we want to have a high degree of certainty that they're going where we know they're going and where we intend them to go.
Get her out! Get her out! Get her out!
Now, this is where you're going to hear the officers discuss where the suspect is, and they're going to say they don't know. And he's also going to be telling the other officer to back away from the door when the shooting starts again. Again, this just reinforces the fact that they don't actually know where he is, which is more so problematic for the guy that's mag dumping through the window.
Are you hurt? Where is he? I don't know. He's in back away from. He's shooting deep.
This is where you're going to hear them ask for a shield, which if they already had one available to them, they should have been utilizing, which is something I already pointed out a minute ago.
He's shooting at us deep.
Here you can see the suspect climbing out of what I presume is the house that they were just shooting at. He climbs over the fence. This is obviously a drone that the SWAT team has up. And at this point, they're already establishing a perimeter around the blocks here. At this point, you see the officers in the street in positions behind their vehicles. You see the Bearcat over here with the marksman in the turret here. And at this point, the officers would be getting direction from the drone, telling them exactly where the suspect is and what is happening. And that's why you kind of see them in this posture here. The suspect just kind of continues to move around and look for a location to probably run from or to. And instead, in a second here, he decides to retreat further towards the residence. And actually, the garage that they end up in is going to be, I presume, this garage right here, because we kind of get a glimpse of this tail end of this vehicle. And so as the suspect moves back this direction, I think he probably at that point enters into the garage area. There aren't many options here, but there are options that I think are better than sending an officer into this space, because that's the last thing you want to do is an officer end up face to face with somebody with a gun. That usually doesn't end well. The space is pretty small, so utilizing a drone in here would be pretty difficult, and you wouldn't be able to see much anyway because of all the garbage. A robot really wouldn't do you a whole lot because it wouldn't be able to maneuver around these things. And therefore, we're kind of left with probably utilizing CS gas. I know that the officers didn't do that because they weren't wearing gas masks. And introducing gas into this small space is going to allow us to detect whether or not the suspect is in here. The chance that he'll be able to overcome the effects of that gas and not move around or not cough are very little. And therefore, if we get a reaction, then we know he's inside here. We can collapse down to the garage and then kind of work it that way. The last thing you want to do is send this officer in here like this. And if you are going to do that with a shield. So if we could have these officers around, and I'm sure they had this conversation, this is a SWAT team, and what are the lessons learned? I guarantee you that, like, one of the lessons is like, we should have put gas in there. And if they weren't going to do that, or after they did that, we should go in there with a shield. Because as a single officer, you cannot cover multiple angles at once. It's impossible. And it's even difficult just with a couple different officers. But in this case, he's actually looking in the direction of where the suspect is when he gets shot, I think 2 or 3 times.
We got blood on the fridge.
Right here, he says, we have blood on the fridge. So if you thought you were in a jacked up situation before, you probably know, it's getting a little bit more dangerous now. You could still call an audible and say, hey, back out. We know he's in here. And then again, collapse down on the garage with still consideration that he could be somewhere else. But then again, utilizing other methods to identify where this suspect is. So this is the moment where the suspect starts shooting. And I believe that this is actually the top of the suspect's head right here. Let me retrace that. So that dark part underneath this white part, I believe, is his face. And that initial round is shot where you can't actually see where the gun is. There's the gun and full display right there. You can see suspect is now pointing the gun at the officer, and the officer was looking at him or in that direction, right? His view may have been obstructed. This is the round right here. You can see at the bottom of your screen where the round actually hits the officer's flashlight. One thing to point out here is Some people might use the idea, well, they don't want to put gas in there because, the effects of the gas, and then citizens come back into their own house after that, that they wait for the gas to dissipate. Well, they're already ramming this garage open and destroying this garage door with this ram right here. So introducing gas is certainly not an issue, or, that's not an excuse that I would be comfortable with using in this situation.
I got you. I got you. Work it out. Work it out.
I think it's important to understand that these situations I would not consider wins. When rounds are hitting us in the headgear, they're hitting us in our vest or on our weapon light, and I think one officer had a minor injury on his finger. These are all rounds that could have hit us in the head or could have hit us in vital areas. And so just because the end result is favorable, meaning that the suspect is DOA, none of us got seriously hurt, it doesn't make these situations a win. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do that by feeding the algorithm down below. And if you're not subscribed yet, it would be cool if you were.